One of the most enduring bass lines of all time was the lead into one of the greatest rock collaborations of all time, Queen and David Bowie. 1981's Under Pressure became a number one hit in the UK. Under Pressure explored how navigating the labyrinth of normal life could bring people to a breaking point. 9 years later, that same, slightly altered bass line would spawn another hit, Vanilla Ice's Ice Ice Baby. Not long after, Vanilla Ice was under pressure, facing a landmark copyright lawsuit that was eventually settled out of court. The feeling of being under pressure constantly can quickly lead to burnout, a topic we've tackled on the show in the past. The ideal way to deal with burnout is to remove yourself from the cause, often your job. But more often than not, that's an unrealistic solution because we all have bills to pay. This week, Steph Lundberg joins Next in Queue to talk about strategies to mitigate burnout for those of us who need to carry on. Among the topics we discuss, the birth of Support Human and Bad Job Bingo, understanding burnout and its symptoms, navigating job challenges and burnout, the importance of taking time off, the evolution of work ethic, rethinking going above and beyond, career planning during burnout, the importance of networking, community, and support, and prioritizing personal well being. Let's get to it. Welcome to another episode of Next in Queue. Today I have of Support Human fame, Steph Lundberg. Steph, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Tired this morning. We're having a snow day here in Colorado, which is very exciting because we haven't had almost any snow. Uh, really need this. I need the moisture, but it's supposed to snow all day. So I'm sitting here in my blanket, which you can't see. Uh, I do want to turn on the heater because I don't want to make noise. So I'm braving it. It's fine. How are you doing?
Doing great. I actually knew that you were having a snow day, not because we talked about it, but because my boss lives in Colorado and we talked about that already today. So
Awesome.
I am glad that you're getting the moisture. We're getting all the moisture too, just in the form of rain
Yeah.
here. So it's a muddy mess in Kansas right now. So
Mm,
there's that.
yeah.
Today, we're going to talk about, I think, something that is going to resonate with a lot of people, people that you know, people that I know, and people that we interact with on a regular basis. But for those that are not familiar with you, and shame on them, let's set the stage a little bit. You have spent your career in support, but I think a lot of people know you from Support Human, the website slash newsletter, and in particular, my favorite feature of all time, Bad Job Bingo.
Yeah. So I got into support because I needed, and I've talked about this everywhere, but I talk about it all the time because I'm hoping somebody can like see what I did and be able to mimic it. But I'm a military spouse. We've moved around everywhere. And we got married at probably the worst time to get a new job and move around. So we got married in '09. So right after the financial crash of 2008, moving around, could not get a steady job. And so I deliberately looked for something that I could move into that would be remote, that would kind of go with me. And so I looked at engineering and I thought that's a lot of investment, and it's I need money now. It's not going to work. So, customer experience support work was the other thing. And I actually started in moderation. So I moderated social media networks and stuff like that, and then moved into support kind of for real. And I've been doing that since about 2014. So you could tell like there was a big gap, from 2009 to 2014 where I was trying to find my place. And thankfully support like turned out to be that for me. And I've worked pretty much nonstop since 2014. In 2023, when Support Human was born, I had gone through two official layoffs and one more sort of unofficial layoff because I had been working with a client. Wonderful, wonderful client. They just didn't need me anymore. And so it was it wasn't really a layoff. It was just the end of the contract. But like, uh, you know, it was the end of like all of my income sources at the time, which is not a great position to be in, especially when you're someone like me who uh, maybe puts a little too much of their identity into work. I probably need to work on that, but it's very important to my sense of well-being and my sense of self to be working and providing for my family and be contributing to like the financial success of the household. And so I was like, I literally cannot just sit here and apply to hundreds of jobs every week. This is just not going to work for me. So then Support Human came around. So Bad Job Bingo specifically, it started with that. I started putting together this sort of unofficial bingo card of when I was going through job descriptions of all the silly and ridiculous things and the weird culture signals and weird egotistical things that companies were saying. So I was like, every time I saw one that was like a commonality, I'd copy it and paste it into like a spreadsheet. And it became a joke for me, right? Like this is the way I was not driving myself crazy with applying to jobs and never hearing back or hearing that I wasn't like they weren't interested or getting into a couple of rounds and then, them not, choosing to go on with me. And so then I'm like, okay, maybe somebody else could take some fun out of this. So I started posting it in Support Driven and Elevate CX, and it really kind of took off. And I'm like, okay, I think there's something here for something else. And then another big thing that happened for the newsletter was Co-Support NYC, I think was the name of it. They had been doing a weekly roundup style newsletter for years and years. And so they stopped doing it in 2020. I think it was 2023, 2022 or 2023. And it was like, they left a big vacuum in the CX world of, just knowing what was going on in CX and knowing what other people were talking about and the content that other CX community members were doing. So when they went away with their newsletter, I'm like, okay, I can kind of take over that, and I'm way wordier than they ever were. Like I love to talk, man. And so it ended up being kind of a longer thing, but I kind of put the newsletter together with Bad Job Bingo there. So that's how that was born.
I loved Bad Job Bingo before I had to really take it to heart because, I was lucky. I spent 10 years at a company and I wasn't looking for another job. But one of the things that I think we both know, a lot of people who have gone through this exercise,
Mhm.
now myself included, of the modern way of sifting through jobs and how challenging it can be. And what I loved about this was that you you took a two-pronged approach, and it was, hey, I'm trying to warn people and or promote jobs that I see, like, hey, like,
Mhm.
all the stuff they're putting in this job listing is great. These are
Mhm.
the kinds of things that we should be looking for. And so it's a help for job seekers, but it was also a call to companies who are putting out these JDs to say, hey, can you please just not put a bunch of BS in here, a bunch of buzzwords
Yeah.
that tell nothing about what is expected of the job?
Mhm.
Give us some salary
Mhm.
in here. And please, for God's sake, don't put all of these senior level requirements in
Yeah.
something that is a junior entry level role,
Yep.
either from a title or a pay standpoint. And I don't know that all these companies are listening. I hope they are. I hope they see that. But I do think that it's one of these fighting the good fights kind of things. And so I've always appreciated that.
Thank you. I hope so. I hope that some companies see it and at least think it through. And I was talking to Ashley Hazlett of Elevate CX and Professional Helpers and about this, and I was like, I'm never poking fun or criticizing hiring managers. It's not hiring managers because hiring managers usually have very little control over what the JD ends up looking like. And
Yeah.
if there's anything good in the JD, it's usually from the hiring manager. So it's a lot of it is just corporate convention. A lot of it is startups trying to mimic things they see in big tech companies, which is a vast majority of it. You can hear my cynicism come out now, but the vast majority of the stuff, the hiring practices that big tech has put into place has been really toxic for a lot of workers, but particularly for CX workers, because CX workers, we tend to be on the bottom of the totem pole. We get the littlest in equity, we get the littlest in consideration. We're constantly fighting for our jobs. The stuff that works for engineers and product managers in big tech is not going to work for CX in big tech or even CX in other stuff. So when we see these trends happening in job descriptions, it's because these smaller companies are coming from companies like Y Combinator, which I would love to talk about that at some point about the problems I see in Y Combinator. You know, Y Combinator, these like accelerated startup cradles, I forget what they're called, and then like big tech, like all of these trends, they're just feeding into each other, right?
Mm,
And
hmm.
if I can break that cycle, I am happy in any way if I can break that cycle. And some of the more alarming stuff that I see, like really ableist stuff, stuff that's kind of hiding racism, stuff that's hiding really toxic work cultures, if I can call that out to job seekers, like that is the biggest and most important part of the mission for Bad Job Bingo specifically because, you know, I have gone into roles where I did not have my eyes open. And because I didn't have my eyes open, my expectations were totally misaligned with what the role was going to be. And that is as much my responsibility as it is the company's responsibility. So I now understand when I'm going into a job or a new company, there are going to be problems with that job and with that company. Hands down, this is not negotiable. It's not like that is, there are going to be problems. And as long as I know what the problems are and I picked those problems, we're good, right? I can
Yeah.
handle that. It's when I don't know what the problems are or when job seekers don't have the tools to know what the problems are and then they go in and they're just blindsided. That sucks, right? And I
Yeah.
really, really want to avoid that for people so that when they're going in, they know what they're getting into. They're going in with their eyes open. They're embracing the challenges and they found challenges that work for them, right? Because that's exciting in
Yeah.
CX to meet challenges that tickle your brain and then you get to work all day on those challenges and that's fun for us, right? And so as long as we can do that, we're good to go. So, yeah. That was a very long-winded reply
I
to your
love it. I
conversation.
love it. So we've been talking about for the last few minutes some of the challenges that go into finding a job. But just because you land a job and you land a job that does align with your expectations, you just said, like, I know it's going to have challenges going into it. And I think that's a realistic way that we should all approach work is know that
Yep,
things are not going to be perfect. Like,
yep,
if you think this job is just going to be rainbows and stars and sparkle. Like it's not. It's a job and it's going to come with its own challenges. And being employed is definitely better than the alternative.
yeah,
But being employed also comes with its own challenges, particularly I think in the environment that we see today. And one of the big challenges that we see are people are just getting burned out. They are working as hard as ever. And sometimes they have taken a role that maybe is not perfect for them
yeah, out of
because
necessity.
yeah, like the job market is just not great for what they bring to the table. And so they take a role that maybe is not their ideal role, but hey, we all got bills to pay, right?
Yeah.
And so let's talk about now I'm in the role,
Mhm.
a role. but I'm feeling burnout. I get at like the end of my work day, I'm just like, I need a drink or I want to go to bed or I want to do something to just take my mind away from all of the things because I'm feeling the constant pressure. What are some first of all, I think maybe tell me about your experience with
Mhm.
that kind of feeling and then let's talk about like maybe some things that we can do about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I mentioned at the start of this that I have been working nonstop since 2014. So that's a long time to work without any significant break. And I don't count the 8 months that I was unemployed as a break because, it's a full-time job looking for work and I was doing other things as well. And so um there was that, and there's also the problem that I'm bipolar, so I think I've talked about this in other places. I have, what's called bipolar 2 disorder, so it's a slightly milder form of bipolar, and with bipolar, you go through cycles of mania and, depression. Hopefully, you're not going through cycles when you're being treated, and thankfully, mine is very well managed right now. It has been for several years, so I'm very grateful for that, but what I've learned from being bipolar is that I don't always recognize, and in fact, I usually don't recognize when I'm going through a manic episode or a depressive episode until I am so deep in it that it's kind of too late, right?
Right.
And so that has been my experience with burnout as well. And burnout for me also mimics the symptoms of depression, right? So I start isolating myself from people. I'm really, really tired. I get more migraines. I get more sick because I'm stressed out all the time and that affects your immune system. You know, uh, I also, the more burnt out I am, the more cynical I tend to feel about things, about the industry in general, about customers, working with customers, like the things that usually didn't or wouldn't bother me a lot, especially coming from customers, like if they're yelling at me or if they're, being unreasonable or not providing information, stuff like that, I've learned affects me way more. And so when you get to the point of burnout and you didn't recognize that you're getting to burnout, because I think for a lot of people that's usually the case because it comes on so gradually that like, hey, if it just slapped you in the face and say, "Hey, you're burned out," like, that would be a lot easier, right? Because then
Yeah.
you could immediately start doing stuff, but that's not really how it works, unfortunately. And so it's not that's the challenge, right, is recognizing that you have burnout, and for me, that's always a challenge for everything is I being connected to my own emotional state is very difficult for me for a number of reasons, but I don't know how difficult that is for other people, but, I always like to say that because I am very good at reading other people's emotions, not so good at reading my own, which is unfortunate. So that's kind of how it was for me. I'm kind of curious about like what is it like for you? Have you experienced burnout and like what has it been? What does it manifest as?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of it, and I think that irritability
Mhm.
is a
Yeah.
big piece of that in that the little things all of a sudden become big things. The
Mhm.
things that would normally just slide off your back or you wouldn't even notice now become things that you fixate on or get really upset about. And there's a need to vent even more,
Yes.
and I think
Yes.
venting is fine. That's a healthy behavior, and I think it's important that you have someone that you can vent to,
Mhm.
but when it is constant,
Mhm.
that's when things can be not only assigned to you, but to the people that have to hear that
Yeah.
or deal with it, right? It affects their emotional state too, and so it's for me, I find that just in general, like your home life becomes more challenging when
Yeah.
you are burnt out.
Yeah.
And when you work from home, like you and I both do,
Yep.
it is very, very difficult to separate the work from the home life in a way that I found like when I used to have a commute. What I loved about my commute was it was a chance for me to decompress,
Right.
right? I could listen to the radio. I had 30 minutes to just, you know, not think about work or just like let that
Decompress.
pressure come down. And I think when we As much as I love working from home and I'm a huge advocate of all of the benefits that come with it does present its own unique challenges, and that's one of it. Like, if I have something that just, like, sets me off, my spouse also works from home. So, like, I can just walk right out of my office, go see if she's on a meeting, and, like, if she's not, I can be like, "Let me tell you about what
This
just
thing.
happened," right? And that goes both ways for us, and I think we found a healthy balance, but there have absolutely been times when she's like, "You know what? You need to figure your shit out
Yeah.
because right now you're like."
It's so funny you mentioned that because I've had the exact same experience with my spouse. I call him Mr. Steph. That way, I don't have to like name him on the internet. But he's such a wonderful sounding board for stuff like that because I'm trying to think like not the last 3 jobs, last 4 jobs, like 4 jobs ago, I was like just venting nonstop, and like there was no like practical resolution for any of my vents. And so to him, that's like a key signal of like something is not right here, right?
Mm,
Like if all you can do is vent, if you can't go back to your boss, if you can't go back to the company and resolve the issues that are causing you so much stress, then it's time either for a new job or a new role in the company or, a come to Jesus moment with the company, which is funny that I use that. We don't really have a Jewish equivalent of that, but I don't know. Go to your rabbi, talk to the rabbi moment. But yeah, if there's no way to have like a definitive resolution or even like progress towards a resolution, like it's time for a new job. It's time for something to change, right?
yeah.
And so he's really good at identifying that before I can because I'm in the thick of it, right? Like I'm in the middle of it I'm in the hurricane. I can barely see in front of my own face. So he's really good at kind of identifying and serving as that sounding board for me. Uh, and I think that kind of rolls really naturally into the recommendations that I have. And I have a whole list of them because I sat down before, I'm gonna write it out so I don't miss anything. And it's funny because the first one was check in with yourself so it doesn't happen in the first place. So, like, be better than me.
Do as
Sometimes
I say, not
not
as
as
I
I
do.
do. I'm trying. I'm trying to
Yeah.
incorporate it, but, like, I've gotten better about it, and actually, incidentally, Bad Job Bingo has made me better at this, where because I was able to identify it in other places, I can now identify toxic cultures and practices and stuff in my own kind of life, in my own work life. And so I'm getting a little bit better, but sometimes you need to just sit down in a quiet room and close your eyes and what are my thoughts? Like, think very meta, like, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Am I feeling like this all the time? Is this a passing feeling? Is there something that I can do about it to fix this feeling? And they answer those questions, or what guides the next step, right? And I think the next kind of resolution that I had was to talk to your boss if you can. And this is the really tricky one because if the job itself is the problem, right? That that makes things really, really hard. And sometimes the boss is the problem, right? And
Mm,
so you don't always have the level of trust and emotional, psychological safety to go to them and say, hey, I'm really burned out. We need to fix the parameters of my job, the working hours, like the duties, like that. All that stuff needs to be fixed, or there's something else going on in the company because it's not always about your job. It's sometimes about dynamics in the company, power dynamics, that stuff like that, politics. We need to come up with a workable solution or I'm gonna have to leave or do something else, right? So if you can talk to your boss, I always feel like that's the first step. And if you can't, then you gotta talk to other people, right? You gotta
yeah.
find somebody else that you trust to talk to about it. And I think that the very next person, if you're really, really in burnout and you can't fix it, and you just kind of have to live with it is a therapist. Like
Mm,
that is the best next step. So if you can afford it and you can access it, really, it's really, really important to get a therapist because neither you or I are mental health professionals. So we can give advice, but we can't. The stuff that really actually helps is going to be the work that you do with somebody who's a professional, I think.
yeah.
Um, and then I think I can keep going or you can stop me at any time if you have thoughts because
I
I,
just wanna step in and say, for those of you that haven't listened to the episode with Aileen Day,
based off of what you just said.
Mhm.
It all goes back to our childhood. Go listen
It
to
really
that
does. It
episode.
really does.
She is, among other things, a clinical therapist, and she mentioned on my show that, every time she has this conversation, she ends up, with somebody's childhood. Fun plug for a previous episode. But yeah, let's keep going with some other strategies because all of these are resonating with me so far.
I love it. I think the other thing that's really important is if you can take time off. Because in in the tech world, we have this thing called unlimited PTO. And on the Bad Job bingo card, if anybody has ever looked at it, the free space is unlimited PTO is a trap because it is. I actually have a TikTok on this too. So it has been established through studies and through just anecdotal experience that when unlimited PTO is established in companies, people actually take less PTO because there's no use it or lose it, which encourages people to actually take their time off, right? And there's also this idea of because it's unlimited, you never really know what's considered reasonable in a company.
Mm,
And
mhm.
they get to set what is reasonable and what is unreasonable, right? Not you, they do. And so because of that, there is always this guessing game that employees are playing when they need to take time off. Like, oh, I just took off a week a little while ago. Just am I allowed to take off another week or another couple of days? Like, can I ask for every Friday off? Because it's unlimited PTO. So why can't you take every Friday off if you want? So like there's this game that's being played that kind of ensures that you don't actually take time off. And the other thing I think that plays into this is when you're a remote worker, there's this idea, well, you're working at home, so what could possibly
Yeah.
be stressing you out, right? Companies look at this as a benefit. And I'm like, and I always say in Bad Job Bingo, there are several horses, dead horses that I beat consistently. There's like bones and dust at this point. But like one of them is that remote work is not a benefit. Remote work is not a benefit. It is a condition of employment. It is just another thing that like with your salary, with, the duties of your position, all it's just a condition of employment. It's not a benefit. So because we think of remote work as a benefit, we don't consider that I look at the calendar or not the calendar, but the schedule I had for the previous week where I sign on. My sign on right now is 10 a.m. because I'm still dealing with, health issues. So I sign it on at 10 a.m., but then I'm still working until 9:30 at night. And that is not healthy. That is not what we're supposed to be doing. But because it's remote work, because we're working at home, there's no clear boundary between when you're on and when you're off, right?
Yeah.
And so that plays into this PTO mentality too, I think. Like just like I said, like what could you possibly be stressed out about? You get to work at home. So why do you need time off, right? So anyway, take time off. And for some of us who are in burnout, this is where you really have to work with your company or your boss if you can. That's the tough part because a lot of us have already taken time off. Like I've already thankfully I have a really wonderful boss right now where I can go to her and say I am just reaching the point where I cannot continue. And that's not good for the company. The company needs me. So if you can kind of phrase it that way, put it as a whatever the risk to the company is, that tends to be a little bit more effective, I find.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to like, don't be afraid to take more time off. Whatever time off you're taking off is not enough. Take more, I think, there. And I'll stop there in case you have
I just
anything you
feel
want to
like
say.
this is a very American
Yes.
problem too.
Yes.
Like the Europeans have this figured out. Like they go on month-long vacations and it's
Hmm.
like everybody just
Yep.
takes holiday and holiday is not like in the US it feels like we take a week and there's almost this guilty feeling
Hmm.
about taking a week. And I feel like in the just the way that we work in America fosters this guilt complex about taking time for yourself and
Yep.
not thinking about work in a way that some other places have figured out like, no, really, this is good for you. It's good
Hmm.
for your family. Like, get away. Stop thinking about this.
Yeah.
And I just had this conversation on a CX Accelerator podcast yesterday about very similar things, but the company is not going to fall down without you. The world
No.
will not end because you are not at work on a particular day. Like if
Yep.
we were talking before we hopped on here, right? You recently broke your arm, and like, if you can't work because you have a health problem and you have to be out for a time, shockingly, the world goes on and
Yep.
people get things done without you. Not to say that you're not important and you don't contribute important
Right.
things at work. I'm
Yep.
sure every one of us does, but we figure out a way to operate in your absence. And I think we all need to remind ourselves of that fact. This will not all fall apart if I am away for a
Exactly.
while.
Yeah. And I think the other, I'm so glad you mentioned that because the other thing I was thinking while you were talking is I did recently break my arm. I had to have surgery to fix the problem that caused the break. And I was out unofficially taking time off, and then I officially had to take short-term leave. So I was off for about 6 weeks. And I remember telling my husband, like, it's really unfortunate that I needed surgery to take this time off, but I really need 6 weeks off where I'm being paid to do nothing.
Yeah.
Right? I really it was at a point where even without the health issues that I was having, that I really I really don't know. I probably would have gotten fired because I was so exhausted and it was so badly affecting my productivity, and I was aware that it was breaking my productivity, that I would have had serious issues. And I would have talked to my boss first. And again, boss is wonderful, very, very lucky in that regard. So I think it wouldn't have come to me actually being fired, but like we would have had to put serious stuff in place if not for that. But like it took a tumor in my arm and me breaking my arm to get that time off. That's what it took.
Yeah.
It wasn't something where I felt like I could go to my boss and I'm like, I need to take 6 weeks leave just because I need to take 6 weeks leave and not be working for a little bit. Like it would never have occurred to me to go to her and ask for something like that. Uh, I think she would have been very open to that. And so the problem was on my side, not her side, right?
Right.
So sometimes it's on us, and it's just a very American thing. And as a millennial, I was raised by a very wonderful boomer, but my mother was like, you don't be lazy. You do your work, you do your time, you work for the money that's being like there's this work ethic that was installed in me that I think also is not always the most healthiest because that was a work ethic that their parents gave them, right?
Yeah.
And so work ethic does not always equal best or healthy, I guess is the point that I am
Yeah.
making. Yeah.
Well, and there was a difference in the work ethic that was expected of previous generations because you did go to work and then you came home
Yes. Yep.
and
Then you could be done working.
we weren't connected by these things
Mhm.
because I can be sitting on the couch at 9 o'clock at night
Mhm.
and be looking at emails that are coming in because I get that on my phone, or looking at Slack messages because I get that on
Yep.
my phone.
Yep.
And so we are in a world today where the work ethic kind of principles of the past that said, hey, you go in and you work your tail off and you always come to work, and all of those things I think were very valid and still can be depending on the type of job that you are in. But in this world where we are constantly connected and people can get a hold of us anytime, and maybe we can do our work in our homes, there's scope creep.
Yeah,
We have
very much
entered the
so.
world of scope creep, and the engineering team is like, no, 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 no. That's scope creep. Don't do that. And we're like, no, it's
What are you
fine.
talking about? It's great. There's no problem here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a very different world. And so I think sometimes the lessons that we took in as young adults, or whenever it was that these things get impressed upon us, they don't always translate to the
Yes.
world that we actually live and function in today.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that actually transitions nicely to my next recommendation, which is stop going above and beyond at work. Stop doing it. Stop it. It is perfectly fine. Again, if people read the newsletter, I must sound like a broken record. I say the same things over and over. It is perfectly fine for you to go to a job or sign into work, do exactly what is expected of you, and then sign off on time at the end of the day. You do not have to, unless you have had a career conversation with your boss or with a company and said, hey, if I do X, Y, and Z, then I can get this role or this promotion. In those scenarios, I think it makes sense to maybe go above and beyond what you're normally doing. In most cases, though, the company that is just free labor for the company. It does not do you any good. Like not most companies, I should be careful here. A lot of companies do not see you going above and beyond as confirmation of your amazingness, and then that leads to a promotion or to a new role or something like that. Most companies then make that your new baseline, right? So you start in, you do what you were hired to do, then you go a little bit above that, and then like, okay, great, that's what you're supposed to be doing. And then you go a little bit above that, okay, great, that's what you're supposed to be doing. And then you hit your limit and you cannot continue at that level. And so you reduce your performance back to what you were supposed to do when you joined. And then suddenly they're like, why are you not performing well? You are not meeting expectations when you were the one who set the higher expectations. So for me, I just don't think it is a worthwhile endeavor in most cases for most people unless a concrete career conversation has been had. And especially when you are burnt out, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, you have to eliminate all the extraneous bullshit, right? You have to eliminate all that stuff, as much of it as you can, because you literally cannot take the load anymore, right? That's what burnout is. You literally cannot take the load. And so you have to intentionally, specifically reduce the level of work output that you're giving to what is reasonable for your role. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, right, the whole what you do for what your compensation thing is really important. Like if I'm in sales, I know going above and beyond is
Will get
probably
you
going to
more.
impact my paycheck, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to get more sales and I'm going to get more commission and I am going to probably then take a longer vacation and do something more
Yeah.
exciting, right?
Yep.
But if I am in whether it's an hourly role or a salaried role that has a fixed compensation structure and there is no additional incentives in place, and I have not had that conversation about where I am trying to go and what's reasonable and what things will help me move toward that, then you're absolutely right. I mean, just doing other things, and it can also damage relationships with your peers
Yes. Very much so.
because the expectations for them get raised because you've raised
Hmm.
them in the eyes of your supervisor. And they're like, hey, what the hell are you doing?
I'm doing my job. Why are you doing this? Yeah, for sure. And then actually, in addition to that, one of the best ways to not combat, but like work within the boundaries of burnout is to start career planning or job searching. So like if you can't talk to your boss, if you're having to reduce your workload at work kind of silently because you can't talk to your boss, if your boss is toxic or your job is toxic, then you have to do other things that give you control over your career, right? That give you control over your future. And so I think it's really, really important, even in burnout, or especially in burnout, actually, to start career planning. What do you want the next step to be? What do you want the next few years to look like? What do you want your next role to be? Because maybe you're in a frontline role now, but you don't want to be in frontline. Maybe you want to be a manager. Maybe you want to do operations. Maybe you want to be in support engineering, which is kind of in the background of helping customers. Or maybe you want to support a different kind of customer, right? Maybe there's all sorts of things that being in CX affords you, right? You can do all sorts of different things. And so planning that out and then figuring out steps to get there is one of the best ways to give you agency or to give you back agency in your work life, I think.
Yeah. You earlier touched on kind of how you got into support. And my story is actually very similar. My contact center career came out of a decade spent in the mortgage industry, and
Mhm,
then we all know what happened to that, in 2000. I was just trying to find a job,
mhm,
and I did find one. This career pathing piece, though, I think is so important in both, number 1, understanding kind of where you want to go with things,
mhm.
and look, life will take turns, and it won't always go to plan, and that's okay. But being able to identify what are some potential things, whether in this company or maybe in another company that has some similar functionality, what are some things that I think I would like to do or I would like to learn how to do? And then being able, because you have done the things that you need to do, to take advantage of opportunities when they come up and prepare yourself for opportunities when they come up. We've talked about on this show about just preparing even for interviewing and
Yes,
being ready for that next level interview and getting feedback, even when
yes.
an opportunity is not in front of you,
Mhm,
being able to prepare yourself so when that opportunity comes, you can take advantage of it and you
yes.
can move into something that's more interesting. And I do think that support roles and CX roles lend themselves to moving up and into different functions. And there are all kinds of opportunities out there. But if you're not prepared
Mhm,
and you haven't thought about it, it's going to make it really difficult for you to take
yeah.
advantage of them when they come up.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say it's probably if you're doing all of that while you're burnt out, it's maybe not the best. So if you're not burnt out now and you haven't done it, go ahead and do it. Right? Go
Yeah.
ahead and do
Start
this
now.
exercise. Yeah, start now.
Carpe
It's always
diem.
best. Yeah. And I say this. This is completely separate from the burnout conversation necessarily, but always be interviewing. Even if you're
Mhm.
very very happy in the role that you're in, always be interviewing. Apply to different jobs. Apply to jobs that you think are a stretch and work on your resume and apply and see what happens. And because it's just, you got to keep that muscle flexed, right? Like, because I was very happy when I was doing, I was very sad when I got laid off because I really liked the company. I really liked the people that I worked with. And at that point, I hadn't applied for a role or worked on my resume for 2 years. And that was on me.
2, first time?
I know. Well, like until I, left my last job, it's a whole other thing, but so, like, it's not that I mean, I'm very adaptable, I'm very flexible, but it certainly was harder for me that I hadn't been doing it the whole time. So
Yeah.
even if you're happy, apply, interview, and then hell, if you get an offer and the offer is better than what you have now, you can then decide, okay, is this the career path that I want? Can I take this back to my company as leverage to get a raise or get a different title, that sort of thing in a different role? So it just gives you power in a way that just sitting idly in your job doesn't really, right?
Yeah.
And then I think one of the really major things that I did is one of those things, if you can't get a therapist, or even if you can get a therapist, really make sure that you have close professional friends. You have a good professional network because when you're burnt out and when you need to do things like prepare for interviews, then you have people that you can go to. And I have gone to Elevate CX, I've gone to Support Driven several times and be like, hey, I need to prepare for a panel interview. Can you guys pretend to be my panel? I have a case study that I have to prepare, that I have to present. Can I present this case study to you and you poke holes in it and tell me what the problems are or make suggestions? And every single time, without fail, literally without fail, I found people, multiple people who are like, yes, absolutely. Let's hop into a Zoom. Let's schedule a Zoom meeting. We'll sit down for an hour and a half, sometimes longer. And they're doing all of this for free because they love you. They love the community and they want things to be better. And so, like, making sure that you have professional networks that you can talk to and also that you can go vent to and who can be the person like your spouse sometimes serves or my spouse sometimes serves, which is like, you sound really unhappy. It sounds like something needs to change. Right.
Yeah.
And then, kind of adjacent to that, making sure that you are also giving back to your community in some way. So, one of the worst things that burnout does to you is it isolates you from your community. It makes you really, really cynical, really, really grouchy, and it makes everything about you, right? Everything is about me, right? And I don't want it to be about me.
Yeah.
I have to get out of my own headspace and do something worthwhile. And for me, when I was laid off, the big piece of that, I talked about that, was to give myself agency back. And the best way for me to do that was to help other people and be useful. I really needed to be useful. And when I'm burnt out, I really need to be useful because it gives me energy. It gives me a sense of well being. And so, I am constantly working on things that I can work on to help people and to make sure that I'm not just sitting here being grouchy and being mad at the world and mad at my situation.
I love that we just talk about community. This is how you and I first met, is through community. There are lots of people that go above and beyond to foster that
Mhm.
community. As you were talking about just opportunities for people to meet, and I don't know if she's still doing it. I had to drop off, but like shout out to Mercer Smith, who
Yes.
used to, and maybe still does, Mercer, I'm not saying you don't still do it, but had just a get together like, hey, just show up. And if you want to just talk through some stuff, talk through some stuff. You got a problem that you're trying to solve at work, solve that. But what it allowed you to do is get to know other people that are in maybe similar roles or facing challenges that you can lend your own experience to. But it's also just a way to remember, like, yeah, other people are going through this too. Like, it's
Yes.
not me. I'm not crazy.
No.
Like, we're just here. It's also another place to vent if you
Mhm.
need to vent and just get some stuff off your chest. These communities, like support driven and CX Accelerator and Elevate CX, your LinkedIn network, or even smaller groups and cohorts, whatever you can find, there is so much value
Mhm.
in connecting with those people, so that also too, if you are looking, or you've just changed full-time jobs to job search. I know when I went through that, my network is the first place that I went. And it's
Yes.
like, okay, well, let me, number one, have some people look over my resume, give me
Mhm.
some feedback on that. People that I talk to about industry players and their thoughts about certain companies. So maybe there wasn't a bad job bingo on this, but I can talk to somebody who works with these, tech companies on a regular basis, and they can say, maybe you want to stay away from that one, right?
Yeah.
That's insight that I wouldn't have otherwise had. And when you're going about that job search, whether it's full time or in the background, being able to have your people, your community kind of supporting you in small little ways, like,
Yeah.
I just can't say enough about that.
No, for real. And I think my first real support job, I found that one on my own. Every job after that has been through the network or because of
Yeah.
somebody I knew. So for the better or worse, I know that kind of sucks actually. I'm not a huge fan of that because it unnecessarily excludes people who are new to the community or who are in places where it's difficult, like in non-English speaking places, for instance, it is a little bit difficult for them to break into an industry or to get a high paying job because there are lots of low paying CX jobs. Lots and lots of them, not as many high paying jobs. And
Yeah.
I want high paying jobs for everybody. And so that makes things a little bit rough, but that's why I say like wherever your community is, go find it. And
Yeah.
you don't have to a lot of folks who are new to this, who are new to networking, I think especially a lot of folks who are new to working, period, they sometimes think, well, every interaction that I have with professional people has to be really, really high quality, really high caliber. It has to be about the job and the work, and I have to show how smart I am and how good at my job and how skilled I am. It doesn't. It really doesn't. So, like, join a place like Support Driven, join a place like Elevate CX, and just shoot the breeze. Just have
Yeah.
water cooler talk. Like talk about this article that you read or the show you watched. Make real human connections. And when you get opportunities to talk about the work, but don't make every interaction about that. And especially when you're burnt out, sometimes you just need to just talk with people. And like that is an excellent really an excellent outlet for getting into the habit of not being isolated. And it's really good for not being cynical because you can just talk to people. You don't have to worry about whether they see you as a high quality professional so that they'll recommend you to places. Most people don't think that way. Some people are very transactional, but most people are not. And most people will just remember, hey, sorry, my computer just announced what time it is. That's an accommodation that I have for myself, so I know what time it is. Oh God, I have a meeting. So yeah, anyway, just be your normal self and people will remember you if you are kind and generous with your time and your knowledge. And that's the important part, I think, when it comes to building a community.
100% agree with that. I come back to support human, and really the most important word in that is the human
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
Be human. So
Yes.
what I hear is in these interactions that you have in networking, if you find that this is a challenge and you want to present yourself as competent, forget about that for a moment. Present
Yes.
yourself as a human.
Human first.
And I think most people appreciate that. They wanna talk to someone who is real, who is a person, and quite honestly, sometimes we don't wanna talk about work.
Yeah.
Like,
You
we
just
talk
wanna
about it enough,
I
like,
just wanna be people.
"Tell me about that cool show that you're watching that I've never heard of," or, "Tell me
Yeah.
about, what hobbies you use to decompress."
Yeah.
I think that is the last piece of advice that I would give people
Mhm.
is
Is actually mine too.
yeah, find something outside of work that
Yes.
relaxes you, whether that's meditation. And we kind of talked about this introspection really
Yeah.
early on, but
Yeah.
if meditation is it, if it's building some Lego, if
Mhm.
it's hanging out with your kids in the backyard, if it's relaxing, at the pool, if it's I don't care what it is, but if you can just find something that allows you to kind of find your zen for a little bit, then sometimes that recharge is really what you need.
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that, and it was actually where I wanted to close, so good job, Rob.
Yes.
Well done. So, like, I said double down on the fun stuff is what and
Yeah.
it needs to be stuff that isn't gonna turn into a side hustle, for real. Do not turn your hobby into a side hustle. Don't do it. You can have side hustles, but your hobby can't be it, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's knitting. So I'll just sit and knit a blanket. I have a blanket I've been working on for years, but like I don't knit to finish. I knit to knit, right? It is
Mhm.
the zen. I can listen to a podcast. I can watch a TV show and I just knit. That's all it is for me. It will never be a source of income. It will never be, sometimes I give my stuff away. Sometimes I make stuff for my kids, but it is not something that will cause more stress in my life, that is, attached to a deadline, that is a matter of quality. It is just for me. So you need to find something that gives you that outlet that is just for you. And one thing that I didn't say that I wanted that kind of ties into that I think you kind of touched on too when you were talking about hobbies is, or finding an outlet, is really, really double down on your relationships. Because I think when you're burnt out, like you said, it really affects your relationships with your spouse, with your family, with your kids. So you have to be very intentional about repairing that relationship or about sustaining that relationship. And so like that's a really big part of it, is as much as like finding an outlet for yourself, like you, that will also be a lifeline for you. And if you don't have a spouse or kids, like double down on your friend group, because I know you have friend groups. And if you don't, then that is a really serious signal. If you don't have any friends, that something is wrong and you do need to find therapy, you need to find help. Because if you have no friends, if you have isolated yourself completely, that's a big problem and you need to fix
Yeah.
that. And then very lastly, go easy on yourself. I am very, very hard on myself. I, like I said, we've talked about the newsletter, we've talked about Bad Job Bingo. I have been very, very hard on myself when I have had to step away from the newsletter for either family reasons or health reasons or burnout reasons, which was very recently the reason for like a long extended that then turned into health reasons, but whatever. And I was very, very hard on myself for that because it's very hard to have a successful newsletter when you can't be consistent. And I'm like, what kind of content creator are you? Which I have a problem with content creator as a thing because I'm not a machine. I don't just create content. I'm a human, but you have to go easy on yourself. Like, recognize when you have to put stuff down. Put stuff down. It's fine. You are not a bad person. You're not a bad professional. It doesn't make you fickle or unreliable. It makes you a responsible human adult. to know when you need to pick stuff up and when you need to put it down and when you need to prioritize. So, yeah.
We can all get better at extending a little grace to others and ourselves.
Yes.
And I love that. And I love that that's where we're gonna wrap up.
Yes.
Extend some grace to yourself,
Yes.
people. Steph, this has been a long time coming. I think
Yes.
I've been trying to get you on the show for well over a year. It's probably
Yep.
been a couple years.
Yeah.
Made it
We
happen.
did it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I'm so glad we got to talk about this topic because obviously I've been through it. And if I can help somebody else not go through it, that would be great. So thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Hey, you guys know what to do. Go down to the show notes, connect with Steph on LinkedIn, and also subscribe to the Support Human newsletter hosted by Beehive, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
Go
hosted on Beehive. Yeah.
make sure you open it. I'm serious. No punches pulled. It's a great read every time it comes out. So go connect, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Next in Queue is produced by me, Rob Dwyer. Theme music is courtesy of Big Red Horse. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with at least one person. Word of mouth is the best way for people to discover new content. And thanks for listening.